Trust me, your future self will thank you, especially when the sacks run out. Download Earn It and make it payday.
You might want to sleep with one eye open tonight. Most people look at urban legends as fiction, scary tales you tell your friends late at night in order to spook them. But what if I told you that some urban legends were more than works of fiction? What if they were based on real-life events? Here are 10 creepy urban legends that turned out to be true. Part 2. Number 1 is the real-life boogeyman. For decades, kids in Staten Island have feared a boogeyman named Cropsy. The legend was that Cropsy was a madman with a hook for a hand who lived in the woods. He would steal children and drag them to the abandoned Seaview Hospital. But that story became very real in the 1970s and 80s when children in the area started to disappear. Cropsy turned out to be a real-life local drifter, Andre Rand. Rand had worked as a janitor at Oak State School, which was an institute for mentally disabled children close to Seaview. In 1972, 5-year-old Alicia Peria disappeared, followed by 10-year-old Holly Ann Hughes in 1981. When 11-year-old T.H. Jackson went missing, Rand was questioned, but was eventually released. But shortly after, he took Hank Gaffario in 1984 and Jennifer Schwager in 1987. Just 35 days after Jennifer went missing, her body was found in the woods near Rand's makeshift campsite. Number 2 is a murder in the library. There's an urban legend that while looking for books in the library stacks, a university student is murdered in cold blood. But the murderer is so quick and quiet that no one hears it happen, and the body isn't discovered for hours. But this was never just a legend. On November 28, 1969, Betsy Aardsma, a 22-year-old graduate student at Penn State University, was at the university's Pathé Library working on a research paper. While she was in the stacks, she was attacked and stabbed right in the heart. It wasn't until 2 unknown men found her that her murder was discovered. Tragically, emergency responders thought that she'd had a seizure and didn't realize that she'd been stabbed because the wound was so small that they didn't notice any blood because she had on a red dress. It wasn't until she was taken to the Student Health Center that they realized what had happened. Most disturbingly is that neither the weapon nor the killer were ever found. Number 3 is death by wedgie. There's an urban legend that says that if you give someone a bad enough wedgie, it can kill them, and that's exactly what happened in December of 2013 in McLeod, Oklahoma. 34-year-old Brad Davis was drinking with his stepfather, 58-year-old Denver St. Clair. The men got into an argument and things became heated. Brad had a lot of pent-up anger for the way that he claims that Denver bullied him growing up. That's when the fight turned physical. And Brad's inner 12-year-old came out when he gave Denver an atomic wedgie. But rather than just your standard forceful underwear pull from behind, Brad pulled the back of Denver's underwear right over his head. At this point, the elastic band got caught under his chin and choked him to death. What's worse is that Brad did not try to save him and ended up getting charged with first-degree manslaughter. As it turns out, not every prank is harmless, especially if there are hard feelings. Number 4 is cooked alive. There's an urban legend that says that a man has to get in an industrial oven that stopped working. Once inside, he fixes it, but the oven turns on, the door jams, and he falls. And yes, this happened to 54-year-old British factory worker Alan Catterall when he met a similar fate. On December 23rd, 2010, workers at Pirana Holdings, which makes kayaks, found Catterall's body in one of their industrial ovens. He had gone inside the oven, which was outside the to clean it out after a fault was detected. But one of Francis, his co-worker and his daughter's fiancé, had found the fault. About a half hour after Catterall had got inside, Francis replaced the fixed part, and not realizing the soon-to-be-popular was still inside, turned the oven back on. The insulated doors shut and locked automatically as the temperature went up to 536 degrees Fahrenheit. Alan was alive. Number 5 is eating a dog. If you're an animal lover, you may want to brace yourself. In this urban legend, a scorned lover tries to reconcile with his ex by making her a nice dinner. But as it turns out, what he was really serving was revenge. That's because the meat that they ate was actually their pet dog that had gone missing. And yes, this really happened. On August 4th, 2014, a woman was attacked by her ex-boyfriend, 34-year-old Brian Eddie Rottentag of Polycedron, after she had broke up with him. She escaped, but when she returned home, her Pomeranian named Bear was missing. But she thought he probably got out in all the chaos. 1 month later, the troubled couple had briefly patched things up, and he made her a nice dinner. The dinner reportedly went well, and it appeared as if the two had made up. But a few days later, on September 7th, he sent her a text.
Just snap a photo and list the minutes. Easy, right? Once it sells, the buyer covers shipping, so there's no cost for you.
Asking how her dog tasted. And what's worse is that he left a bag on her door with Bear's paws in it. Number 6 are spying eyes. In this legend, parents are in the middle of putting their baby to bed when they hear a creepy voice coming from the baby monitor saying, "I'm watching you." Unfortunately, this is not just a legend. On July 7, 2015, a Canadian couple in London, Ontario, was putting their child to sleep when their camera baby monitor was remotely activated. It started to play music, and a voice told them that they were being watched. The voice would say things like, "Wake up, little boy, daddy's looking for you." They literally had a real-life boogeyman on their hands. As it turns out, their wireless router had been hacked, and police say that it could have been done from anywhere. This was just one case of the man in the monitor that unbelievably has been occurring more and more. Remember that next time you connect any home monitoring equipment to your Wi-Fi. Anyone could be watching. Number 7 is death by hot pepper. There was an urban legend of a chili pepper so hot that it killed the man who dared to eat it. This is definitely not one you want to try at home because this legend isn't just a legend. In fact, it's a scary tale. In September of 2008, 33-year-old aspiring chef Andrew Lee from Doncaster, England, challenged his girlfriend's brother to a chili eating contest. Lee had made a super spicy the challenge by eating an entire plate. Not long after finishing, he started to feel ill and get itchy, but decided that there wasn't anything to worry about, so he went to bed. But Lee never woke up. It's believed that capsaicin, the active hot chemical in chilies, went right into his bloodstream, causing him to have a terrible allergic reaction and thus a painful heart attack. Consider this next time you order very hot wings. Number 8 is the body in the bed. This urban legend tells the story of a couple who checked into a hotel room that smelled odd, but regretfully they waited until the morning to tell management. Shortly after, it was discovered that there was a body stuffed in their mattress. Unfortunately, this gruesome tale turned out to be very true at the Budget Lodge Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. Sonny Millbrook stayed at the hotel but was last seen by hotel staff on January 27, 2010. A missing persons file was opened with a sign of Sonny, who had paid for rent, and all her belongings were still in the house. But unfortunately, the room had to be cleared out and was rented at least 5 times before the staff started to notice a bad smell in mid-March. Police were called, and it was found that Sonny had been murdered and her body had been stuffed inside the bed's metal box frame. Enjoy your next night out at a hotel. Number 9 is he's inside the house. This legend tells of a girl that is home alone and starts getting creepy and threatening phone calls from a stranger. But when she checks the phone, she realizes the call is insane. This nightmare scenario became for a 16-year-old girl from from Chester, England in July of 2014. 18-year-old Kyle Ravenscroft had become obsessed with posters. Began sending threatening and frightening text messages,
See that one, son of a
including that he was
bitch.
in her yard watching window. That's when things escalated and he told her that he was inside the house. The victim thought that he was just joking, but made the wise choice to sleep in her mom's room that night. In the morning, when she went back to her room, she felt like she was being watched. That's when she looked under the bed and found Kyle. And number 10 is the elevator decapitation. This story has it that when rushing to catch an elevator, the doors closed on a victim's head. But the doors wouldn't open and they faced a grisly death when the elevator started moving and they were decapitated. This legend became reality on August 16, 2003 in Houston, Texas. Dr. Hitoshi Nakaido, a 35-year-old surgical resident, tried to get into the elevator with his colleague, Karen Steinow, as the doors but didn't quite make it. The elevator had been out of service only days before and apparently was placed into service a little too early. Nakaido's shoulders were pinned, and despite Steinau's repeated pressing of the emergency stop button, the elevator continued to go up. She tried to pull him back inside the car, but with no luck. And within seconds, Nakaido was decapitated right in front of her. His body fell down the elevator shaft, but his poor colleague was trapped inside the elevator for over an hour with his severed head. Remember that next time you rush to catch an elevator. I really appreciate you guys watching this, guys, and if you enjoyed it, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you have not yet. I'll have a brand new video for you tomorrow at 12 West Coast time, 3 Eastern Standard Time, so make sure you come by then. Have a great day and sweet dreams.
When my boys get home, if there's food in the house, they're eating it. Now, I love my kids, but grocery prices have been getting higher and higher all year. And last week, we were stuck without food 3 days before I got paid. I started freaking out, and then I remembered Grant Cash Advance. It's an app that lets you request $25 to $350 in cash advances with no credit check and no late fees. I paid a small fee, and I got my money in less than 5 minutes, so I could get food the same day. Don't stress about payday. Download the app today. Nobody warned me that feeding 2 teenage boys would cost more than my car payment. When my boys get home, if there's food in the house, they're eating it. Now, I love my kids, but grocery prices have been getting higher and higher all year. And last week, we were stuck without food 3 days before I got paid. I started freaking out, and then I remembered Grant Cash Advance. It's an app that lets you request $25 to $350 in cash advances with no credit check and no late fees. I paid a small fee, and I got my money in less than 5 minutes, so I could get food the same day. Don't stress about payday. Download the app today.
Another day, another check-in.
Uncle Mouse here to tell you a bedtime story.
Creepypasta stories lurk in the lines between fiction and our darkest realities. These digital nightmares have become modern folklore, and they're always ready to send shivers down your spine. From eerie urban legends to paranormal encounters that defy explanation, they're expertly crafted to haunt your dreams. The following is part 5 of some of the most petrifying creepypastas ever shared online, and there's no telling what psychological impact these horrific tales might have on you. So prepare yourself for a journey into the darkest recesses of the internet, where the only thing more unsettling than these stories is the fact that they could very well be true. And before we begin, please leave a like on this video. The more likes and comments we get, the farther the video reaches in the algorithm. Thank you, of course, for your support. And be sure to support the original writing of these stories on the Creepypasta website. Let's begin. The Watcher tells the story of Sarah, a nurse who woke up before sunrise each morning. Like every morning, Sarah went to the kitchen to boil some water. When she looked out the window, the large oak tree in her backyard had the silhouette of a dark figure in its branches. She considered calling the police, but since the figure had disappeared, she thought her tired eyes were just playing tricks on her. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. After a long, hard day at work, she returned home after having almost entirely forgotten her encounter. When she went inside, her heart sank as she saw muddy footprints leading from the back door to the house. She grabbed her phone to call the police. A text came. It was an unknown number sending her a picture of her from behind as she peered out the window that very morning. She completely panicked when she realized that the picture was taken from inside the house. She frantically scanned her surroundings and froze as she saw a pair of eyes staring at her from the darkness of the hallway. The lights flickered, then went out, and in complete darkness, she heard footsteps slowly approaching her. Suddenly, a cold hand clamped over her mouth, and a voice whispered, "I've been watching you." Sarah never heard from him again. When the police arrived the next morning, they found nothing but muddy footprints and a single chilling note on the kitchen counter. She was delicious.
Should keep you alive if you use it well.
As seasoned pig farmer James Jimmy O'Neill rounded up his pigs for slaughter, he handed a young apprentice a knife and tasked him with killing his first pig. The boy was extremely nervous. Noticing his hesitation, the already blood-soaked farmer yelled, "Boy, you're entirely too old to be pussyfooting with a grown hog like that. If you intend to do a job, then do it. Don't hesitate." The boy looked down at the fear-stricken pig. Again, the boy hesitated, so the frustrated farmer rushed in with a quick slash. The job was done. All the boy could do was watch the thick, hot blood flow towards the drain and stare into the lifeless eyes that seemed to accuse him of betrayal. It was at that moment that he realized he'd never be able to do it. He was no killer, especially since he spent an entire year tending to that very pig, talking to it as if it were an old friend, perhaps the closest thing he had to him. As the guilt grew and grew, the room became unbearably hot and the walls closed in. His breathing grew heavy, the lights grew dim, and he collapsed onto the blood-stained floor. When he came to, he looked up to the old farmer standing over him with a knife. The farmer turned to a smaller figure and yelled, "Boy, you're entirely too old to be pussyfooting with a grown hog like that. If you intend to do a job, then do it. Don't hesitate." The farmer bent down towards him and ran the knife across his neck. His blood flowed towards the drain, and as he faded into the darkness, he looked up to see his mournful self looking down at him.
POV, you can afford extra groceries this week because you downloaded Dave and got $260 in extra cash. You can qualify as soon as you like the bank and open an extra cash account. Guys, this is my go-to when I'm low on cash. With for payroll right now, I'm really need gas money. No one's borrowing money from my parents or friends. I just download Dave and transfer extra cash instantly to a Dave checking account. I tell everyone about this all the time. My sister downloaded the app yesterday and got $260. Download Dave to see how much you can get.
These features from Robinhood Gold are too good not to share. Get a 3.35% APY with Robinhood, and you can get up to $210 match on your eligible contribution to your IRA. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to maximize your money's potential for just $5 a month. Sign up now and get the first 30 days free.
The man and his young daughter used to live in a small apartment. He decided to move because of the bad neighborhood, but mainly because of a guy in the apartment right above theirs. He was a weird-looking man who mostly kept to himself, but around midnight every night he made these strange noises. They weren't loud, but he was a really light sleeper, so it was hard for him to sleep with those little bumping sounds going on and on. It reminded him of high heels walking around, but not as loud, as if the person was walking lightly, trying to be more quiet for the man and his daughter. After a few days, the man realized that the pattern was always the same, like a recording played over and over with random intervals in between. That went on for the better part of a year, almost always the same sequence of bumps, slowly driven into the man's mind, sometimes for hours during the night. Several years later, in their current home, the man was helping his daughter with some homework. She was learning alternate methods of communication with Morse code. She knocked on the table with her knuckles. A shiver immediately ran down the man's spine. It was the exact same pattern. Immediately, he asked her what it meant, and she laughed. It's the easiest one, Daddy. It's the one to call for help. In 1983, a team of deeply religious scientists believed that a person without any senses could be able to perceive the presence of God. An elderly man who had nothing left to live for volunteered, so they performed a complex operation to sever his sensory nerves. He retained full muscular function, but he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. Now he was alone with his thoughts. He mumbled slurred sentences, but soon he began naming the deceased relatives of the scientists. He had personal information that only their relatives would have known. Ghostly voices that refused to leave him alone. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping, but that just caused severe night terrors. He began screaming, clawing at his non-functional eyes, and begging to be killed. But the scientists were convinced that he was close to contacting God. When he started biting off chunks of his own flesh, they restrained him. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops streamed from his face. For 2 weeks, he was manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head, and despite his blindness, made contact with the scientist and whispered, "I've spoken with God. He has abandoned us." His vital signs stopped, and they couldn't find a formal cause of death.
That's some scary shit.
To celebrate his parents' 20th wedding anniversary, a young man was getting ready to meet them and his sister at the family's favorite Italian restaurant. He was getting dressed in his best suit when at exactly 5:33 p.m., he received a startling text message from his mother. He was confused at first since the text was just a jumbled mess of random letters and numbers, but his confusion turned to worry when he read in that weird jargon the legible phrase, "Please help me." Getting a chill, he immediately replied, "Are you okay?" and instantly got a reply, "Oops, pocket text." At that moment, he breathed a huge sigh of relief. Moments later, he received the same text from his father. In the mess of letters and numbers, he could make out the phrase, "Please help me." And before he could respond, his father said, "Oops, pocket text." Now, his father was a joker, so he thought that this was his way of poking fun at his mother's mistake. But when he got the exact same message from his sister, he felt pure, unmistakable panic. This couldn't be a coincidence. In a state of shock, he began running to the restaurant, but was stopped by a police officer. The officer told him that the road was closed because of a huge car crash. The young man saw the wreckage of his parents' car and was horrified to see his mother, father, and sister laying lifeless on the road. It was later reported that they had all died instantly at exactly 5:32 p.m., exactly 1 minute before the texts. One day, instead of begging for change, a homeless man in Queens began selling paintings. He went to a recycling center for old paint cans and painted on any material he could find. Surprisingly, the man was really good, and the locals were happy to support his new venture. They loved his landscape, but for some reason, everyone hated his portraits of him. They'd look at their own painted face in disgust, and soon, no one asked for portraits again. One man became extremely confused. He told his neighbor that hers was beautiful and amazingly lifelike. The woman slapped him and ran off, frightened. Nevertheless, he was so impressed that he asked the painter for one of his own. He paid the man $2 and was told to come back the next day. When he returned, the man was gone, but the portrait was there with a note that read, "Good luck." He uncovered the painting and was horrified. He looked twisted, warped, and was clearly dying, if not already dead. Bugs and crows fed on him, and it made him physically ill. A neighbor behind him said, "Hey, that looks amazing. It's so lifelike. I ought to get one done too." And when the man turned around, the neighbor looked twisted, warped, and clearly dying, with bugs and crows feeding him. He
Cool.
looked around. Everyone and everything looked the way he did. Everything was horrible and ugly, and it made him ill. And when anyone said to not get
I'm kind of obsessed with birds. That's not the best part.
Check your socials because there's big news in the sports world. No, it's not. Big free agent signing. The DraftKings Sports app is now available nationwide. So if you're anywhere from Florida, Texas to California, you can get in the game at the speed of sports and feel the sweat in all 50 states. The DraftKings experience you know and love, all in one easy-to-use app. Available now nationwide. New DraftKings customers
Yes.
After a teenage girl was hit by a drunk driver, she comes out of her coma in a shared hospital with a boy named Mason. The doctors told her that she had about a 60% chance of ever walking. But Mason started becoming her main emotional support. On many lonely nights, they'd snuggle up in bed together, and the nurses remarked that they could be an old married couple and how they've known each other forever. Mason had the Hodgkin's lymphoma and was given a 60% chance of surviving. The girl thought that their connection would help both of them. As she was getting better, Mason was getting worse. Chemo made his brows curl thin to almost nothing, and his skin turned pale. When her legs grew strong enough to be released, she visited him every day. One night, Mason's heart stopped, and the girl completely broke down. When he came to, she told him to never leave her alone like that again. She didn't want to leave him and hated seeing his frail body hooked up to those machines, so they stowed away to her parents' cabin. She was happier than ever. She didn't care that she was on the nightly news. They were together. She didn't care that the police were looking for him. They were together. She didn't care that his flesh crawled with maggots and peeled off his bones, or if the smell of his rod never faded from her skin. His lips were still warm at night, and his one strong arms would hold her. As long as they were together, everything would be okay. Having grown up poor in the Deep South, two brothers had to share a bed for years. When the older brother turned 10, he was overjoyed when he was given his own bed. Finally, his little 6-year-old brother Ollie wouldn't annoy him with his tossing and turning, or for that matter, need to be held when he got scared of every little thing. But only days after the boy got his new bed, the shrieks started. At first, he thought Ollie screamed because he'd gotten scared, but the sound echoed through the tiny room again, and he knew it was not a normal cry. And since the room was pitch black at night, the boy couldn't see a thing. Every night at roughly the same time, the sharp yells would break him up. He knew it wasn't his dad, but he definitely knew it wasn't Ollie, because Ollie was hugging him tightly. The boy had finally gotten his own bed, but the shrieks scared Ollie to crawl into his bed every night, shaking in fear. Those sleepless nights got so bad that the boy almost went insane. His parents didn't believe him since the shrieks never happened when they were in his room. His grades were dropping and he was miserable, so they decided to move. The new house was perfect. The noise hadn't followed him there, and better yet, there was even a bunk bed for the boys. Ollie wanted the top bunk, but the older boy argued that he deserved it. After all, Ollie had ruined every night of sleep for years climbing into bed with him. But Ollie just looked at him puzzled, saying, "I never once did that." In a particularly rainy season, a man's ceiling began leaking into his apartment's dining room. He shrugged it off and put a pod over it, expecting the leak to stop soon. But it kept raining and the pod soon overflowed. He had to dump the water out the first thing in the morning and again when he got home from work. Eventually, the leak began damaging the white plaster ceiling, turning it into a dull shade of brown. He checked the weather and realized that it would continue to rain for the next 10 days. The man was worried about the ceiling mildewing and called the landlord. He left a few voicemails, but the landlord would not return his calls. Usually he was easy to reach, but he thought, well, it's the landlord's property, so it's his problem to fix. One night, the man was startled awake by a massive crash. The ceiling collapsed, and a mangled human figure was laying on his table. He sprinted out of his apartment and called the police, gagging at the smell. While the police performed an autopsy, the man finally reached the landlord. The landlord was just as panicked and alarmed as he was, and the man pleaded for him to join him at the station. When the detective approached, he lowered his phone and his blood ran cold. The remains belonged to Richard Thompson, his landlord, and he had died over a year ago. He wondered if his landlord was dead, then who was on the phone with him right now? This story is one person's account of the afterlife. It's just as
What's that?
their soul looked down at their human form lying under a mangled metallic roadside wreck, and a voice asked, "So, that next life?" She introduced herself. On his very day, both let go. Was this heaven, or was this hell, or perhaps some form of limbo? Cindy just giggled and led the way through the strange world. She never knew soul.
God damn it.
That is a hard question to answer. Cindy mourned, well, for your sake, you better if you would. Suddenly, they heard a loud commotion, and Cindy excitedly shouted, "Come on, this way." They reached the front of the hospital, where hundreds of people were savagely ripping each other apart. Someone is giving birth here. These souls are fighting to get inside of that newborn shell. There's no baby until the soul penetrates it, and if no soul makes it inside, the doctors pronounce the shell dead. Your fighting strength depends on your karma, so bad souls don't stand a chance. They will never get a shell and will painfully wither away. Children are the most dangerous because they're pure and innocent, so stay away from them during fights. Completely shocked, the new soul once again asked if this was limbo. Cindy replied, "This is hell. The life you left behind is heaven, and you'll have to fight tooth and nail to get back there." Well, thank you for watching this video, and please remember to leave a like, a comment, and share this video if you really enjoyed it. And be sure to visit the Creepypasta website to support the writers of these stories. And of course, if you want to watch more, there's some clickable links on screen, and be sure to add me to all my socials. Links are in the description. I'll see you next time.
3 reasons why the 2-week pay cycle just isn't it. Reason 1, you can literally do taxes with a click of a button and order french fries wherever you are. Money is basically digital. I don't get it. Reason 2, you work every day, all week, but then you're stuck. For payday? No thanks. Keeps going whether or not it's payday. Reason 3, why keep doing this when there's something that can help? It's called Earn It. It lets you access your pay as you earn it, up to $150 a day with a max of $1,000 between paydays. You keep going, but seriously, get Earn It today and see what's available for you.
PayPal, pay, send, save. Download today and get started.
What's the damage? Off you go. Sure thing.
This is what I'm getting paid in 6 days, but this is what I need for rent today. So here's how I'm going to outsmart the Gap because rent.
There is to scare you may want to know. Okay, let's begin. They say that there's a kernel of truth in every story. Every story has something that inspired it, a real-life event that grew into a story that perhaps even the author did not expect it to become. And oftentimes these stories are born from horrible events, events that were devastating and traumatic to the author. Maybe these stories were a way for them to communicate their pain under the guise of a fictional story. Or perhaps they just want the reader to feel the same fear that they did on that fateful day.
Or perhaps it's just
Here
about
are the 5
bullshit.
scariest creepypastas that will keep you up at night. Number 5 is I found a letter from my stalker. The author tells a story of a note that they found on their lawn the day of their birthday that they just can't describe. The note begins by an anonymous writer describing this person knew Minister. Things turn unsettling when the writer describes Minister as a ghost. How nobody else saw her except him. How day in and day out, at the moment he left the classroom, he would forget her until the next day, when she would desperately try to remind him of who she was. To Minister, this was bizarre, and she thought this person to be crazy, but then she kept reading. She explained how I'm never be like you. I'm rising up and I'm ready to fight you. I'm ready to fight you.